Okay, now we're going to get started on the next stage. If we remember our model of stimulus or cue, something which sets off a habit, and then we spoke about response, and then we spoke about reward. So now we're talking about reward. Now reward is going to be, as opposed to everything else which we've done until now, which has seemed almost intuitive or completely intuitive, and we've been giving structure to it, but there hasn't really been a chiddush. Here, as we walk into reward, we're actually going to get into something which is somewhat counterintuitive, okay? And it's really going to get us into the kishkas of neuroscience, okay? I'm going to feel a little bit almost like a brisker in the sense that we're taking a sugya which seems simple and seems pashut, and we're suddenly going to make it more counterintuitive and more complicated in order to really get to the understanding of it. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about, the neuroscience of yetzer. So let me talk about why it's counterintuitive, or what's counterintuitive about it. Okay, when we talk about reward, and now using the topic reward, it's very general, and we're going to see how we break that up. Okay, when we talk about reward, we really talk about motivation of what we're getting to. And there are really two totally separate categories of motivation. Okay, and that is what we call in Torah, Ava and Yira, or what we talk about in the world of psychology or neuroscience. We talk about motivation towards something, or we talk about motivation away from something. And as we're going to see right now, okay, those are two systems, okay, which work completely, to a certain extent, completely differently and completely separately. Okay, and we're going to see why. Okay, but those are two totally different systems which potentially take part in totally different places of the mind in a totally different way. Now, what we're going to start with is only one of those. We're not going to start with the Yira side. We're not going to start with when I have motivation away from something or avoiding of something. Okay, we're going to leave that on the side for now. Right now, we're talking about the habit and motivation towards something, and that's when you use the concept of reward. Okay, there is a concept of negative reward and positive reward, or carrot and stick. Okay, right now we're just going to talk about habits which surround the concept of reward, of carrot, of motivation, that I do something because I'm drawn towards something. Okay, if the model, which one of the examples we'll work with, because it's an easy one to fit into the model, is when we talk about eating. Okay, we talk about the pleasure or the hana of the food, and we're going to have to see how that works, what the neuroscience of yetzer is. Okay, what's counterintuitive about it? What's counterintuitive about it is that we understand the motivation or the pleasure or hana, okay, when we talk in a cognitive model, which is saying the reason why I want to do something is because there's something at the end. Okay, and that's why I like something. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. When I think about why I want something or what I'm anticipating, so then we understand the role of reward. Okay, when we talk about neuroscience, when we talk about neural pathways, okay, and we spoke about and we're talking about a track of why one thing leads to another. Okay, so now it's going to be a little bit trickier to understand what reward has in it. Reward, when I'm thinking or anticipating something, we understand the purpose. Okay, when we have something which happens automatically, then reward, to a certain extent, linearly or time-wise, is out of place. Okay, because my anticipation of what's going to be, okay, shouldn't affect, or how does that affect automatically? Okay, when I say automatically, without me thinking, how does the reward come into play? And here is where I want to flip the model a little bit. Okay, if we talk about, normally when we talk about a stimulus, okay, or a cue, some sort of setting which sets off a process, okay, and then we spoke about a response and a reward, that's really not the order which is happening. Really what's happening is the response is always happening at the end. The response is the end of the process of habit. What's happening is really, while there's a reward at the end in terms of creating the habit, what's really happening over here, okay, before the response, is anticipation, or what happens to our body in anticipation, in our mind and our body, in anticipation of reward. Okay, if we think of our classic, for those who have studied psychology, okay, those Pavlovian dogs, Okay, that when, okay, and we'll give our example of the hunger again. Okay, but when a bell rings, okay, so the point is not that the dog is now thinking about the food. Okay, but what's happened in a habit is automatically, okay, there's something in the system which kicks off, which we'll have to understand what that is scientifically. There's something in the system which kicks off, which already physiologically in the body starts to salivate, starts to anticipate, starts to be hungry. Okay? And this is where we talk about it's not so much the reward, but the anticipation and the regularity and the fact that we've gotten used to a certain reward, which sets off already a hunger for that reward. Okay? The minute that I sit down at a table and there's nosh in front of me, okay, it's already physiologically, I start to get hungry. I start to get an urge. I start to get a yetzer. Okay, so it's not so much the taste of the food later, or the pleasure of eating the food later, as much as the pleasure which started that process and started that neural pathway has now created something in us physiologically, which now starts to be hungry, and that's going to bring us into the world to a different piece of the puzzle of neurology, called neurotransmitters. Okay, is going to bring us into the piece of, if now we've been speaking about the patterns and the etzem, the patterns, now we're going to be talking about the quality of the activity of those patterns. What happens in those neural patterns? What happens now? Okay, and hunger, I think, is an excellent way to speak about it. Okay, when food is brought out, I actually get hungry. And when I actually get hungry, it's difficult to stop myself from eating. Okay, this piece in the Rambam, okay, is called chelek hamitorer. Chelek hamitorer is that aspect in the person which gets set off automatically without thinking, which already craves something, which already wants something, which my body, it's not just that I want something. I might not even be thinking that I want it. I might even not want it. I don't want to eat it. I don't want to eat it. I don't want to eat it. But my body is hungry for it. Now, that hungry for it is not necessarily food. That hungry for it it can be, I'm hungry for going back to sleep. I'm hungry for some sort of activity. For this, we're going to have to understand a little bit about neurotransmitters, and that we'll do in the next time of really start. Okay, this was really just to recreate the model. Okay, and we're going to have to break this down into pieces. Recreate the model of what we're doing is we're taking the effect of the reward and bringing it in front to see what's happening to us. Okay, what's happening to us in Chelek HaMitorah. The reason this is so crucial is because if we want to create a habit, we have to do it in a way where we actually understand how we create a hunger. And if we want to break a habit, okay, or better yet, if we want to change or reprogram a habit, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way either to refill that same hunger in a different way, okay, or how to become unhungry. Just stopping myself from eating doesn't necessarily get rid of the hunger. Okay, and that's okay. So that's why gvura is going to be important in the process, but is not going to be the entirety of the solution. Okay, and with this, we'll take a break for now, and we'll continue. Kol tov.